My wife called our marriage modern slavery, so I gave her the freedom she demanded. You want to know what it's like watching someone destroy their own life while calling it empowerment? Let me tell you about the 6 months my wife spent liberating herself straight into reality's harshest lesson. If you're into honest stories about relationships, trust, and betrayal, hit that follow button. You won't want to miss the next one. It started with two words that would change everything: modern slavery. That's what Rachel called our marriage. Not during a fight, not in the heat of an argument, just casually while we sat on the couch after I'd spent my Saturday fixing our broken fence and cleaning the gutters. You realize this whole setup is just modern slavery, right? She said, scrolling through her phone. I cook, I clean, I manage your life, and for what? So you can feel like the big provider? I actually laughed. The woman who considered unloading the dishwasher her maximum household contribution was lecturing me about domestic slavery. But she wasn't joking. Her face told me she was dead serious. Here's the thing about Rachel. We'd been married for 4 years. Good years, or so I thought. We had date nights every Friday. We traveled twice a year. We just bought our first house together 6 months ago. But apparently, while I was thinking we were building a life, she was discovering some online community that convinced her she was oppressed. I'm not your maid, she continued, warming to her theme. I'm not your secretary. I'm not here to make your life comfortable while mine gets smaller and smaller. What made this particularly rich was that I earned about 85% of our household income. I handled the mortgage, the car payments, the insurance, the retirement accounts. She worked part-time at a boutique downtown, mainly because she wanted something to do rather than out of financial necessity. But now apparently our arrangement was slavery. Over the next few weeks it got worse. Every conversation somehow looped back to her liberation theory. If I suggested we grab dinner together, I was monopolizing her time. If I mentioned we were low on milk, I was assigning her domestic duties. If I came home tired from working late, I was expecting her to be my personal restoration service. The breaking point came at a dinner party we hosted for 3 other couples. I'd spent the afternoon grilling steaks while she tossed a salad and arranged store-bought appetizers. Nothing unusual. We'd done it dozens of times. But as we sat around the table, she decided to enlighten everyone. Marriage is just modern slavery with better marketing, she announced apropos of nothing. The table went silent. You could hear the ice cubes shifting in someone's drink. Think about it, she continued. Women are expected to provide domestic services, emotional support, and social coordination without any real compensation or recognition. It's unpaid labor disguised as love. Our friends exchanged uncomfortable looks. Her best friend Melissa actually put down her wine glass and stared. Take tonight, for example, Rachel went on. I spent hours planning this menu, shopping for ingredients, preparing food, and I'll spend tomorrow cleaning up. What does he do? Stands next to a grill for 30 minutes and gets praised for being such a helpful husband. Every eye turned to me. This was my moment to either defend myself or let her completely redefine our marriage in front of our social circle. But instead of getting defensive, something clicked into place, a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I set down my fork and smiled. Not a happy smile, a smile that said I understood exactly what game we were playing now. You're absolutely right, I said calmly. Slavery is terrible. No one should have to live like that. She blinked, clearly not expecting agreement. If that's how you see our marriage, I continued, my voice measured and steady, then we definitely need to do something about that, because I would never want to keep anyone in slavery. That would make me a pretty terrible person, wouldn't it? The room stayed quiet for another beat before someone changed the subject to the weather. But the damage was done. She'd drawn her line in the sand, and I'd accepted her challenge. What she didn't realize was that freedom works both ways. After our guests left well, after I cleaned up while she checked her phone, she seemed to sense something had shifted. You're being weird, she said, not looking up from her screen. Just thinking about what you said tonight, I replied, loading plates into the dishwasher. About slavery and freedom and all that. You made some interesting points. She finally looked at me, and I could see a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Like maybe she'd pushed something further than she'd intended. But it was too late for second thoughts. She'd opened this door, and I was going to walk right through it. The next morning, I woke up with perfect clarity about what needed to happen next. If Rachel wanted freedom from the slavery of marriage, then freedom was exactly what she was going to get. And over the next few months, she was going to learn that freedom comes with a price tag she couldn't afford. The Liberation Project kicked into full gear on Monday morning. I opened the fridge expecting to find my usual packed lunch, something she'd been doing for 2 years without complaint, and instead found a note taped to the milk carton. Free women don't pack lunches for their oppressors. Figure it out yourself. I actually laughed out loud, stood there in my kitchen at 6:30 a.m. and laughed until my sides hurt. She thought this was punishment. She thought making me buy my own sandwich was going to break me down. That evening, I came home to chaos. She was sprawled on the couch in pajamas, wine glass in hand, still wearing the same clothes she'd slept in. The kitchen looked like a hurricane had hit it, dishes piled in the sink, coffee grounds scattered across the counter, an empty pizza box on the table. "How was your day?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Liberating," she said without looking at me. "I spent the whole day doing exactly what I wanted to do instead of what society expects me to do. It feels amazing." "I can see that," I said, surveying the chaos. "Very amazing indeed." She missed the sarcasm completely. Over the next week, her liberation expanded. She stopped doing laundry, hers or mine. She stopped grocery shopping, claiming that maintaining our food supply was domestic servitude. She even stopped basic cleaning, letting dishes pile up until we ran out of clean plates. But here's what fascinated me most. She kept spending money like nothing had changed. New clothes kept appearing in her closet. Expensive skincare products lined the bathroom counter. She'd order takeout for herself and leave me to figure out my own dinner, but somehow never worried about where the money was coming from. Then she discovered Wives Awakening. Every Thursday night, she'd disappear for 3 hours to attend their meetings, coming home energized and full of revolutionary ideas about relationships. "Tonight we talked about emotional labor," she announced after one session, finding me reading in the living room. "Do you have any idea how much unpaid emotional work women do in relationships?" "Enlighten me," I said, not looking up from my book. "We manage the social calendar. We remember birthdays and anniversaries. We maintain relationships with both families. We provide comfort and support when men are stressed. We're basically unpaid therapists and personal assistants." I closed my book and gave her my full attention. "That sounds exhausting. How do you think we should fix that?" She blinked, clearly expecting an argument, not a question. "Well, women need to stop providing these services for free. We need to establish boundaries." "Makes perfect sense," I said. "You shouldn't have to do anything that feels like unpaid labor." Again, agreement where she expected resistance. I could see it confused her. "Exactly. So I've decided to stop managing our social obligations. If you want to see your family or friends, you'll need to arrange it yourself. I'm not your secretary anymore." "Fair enough," I said, reopening my book. "I'll let my mom know she should call me directly from now on." That weekend, she put her new boundaries to the test. My sister called about a family barbecue, and instead of automatically saying we'd be there like she used to, Rachel handed me the phone. "Your family, your responsibility," she said. Sunday morning arrived and I got dressed for the barbecue. She looked surprised when she saw me putting on shoes. "Where are you going?" "Family barbecue. Remember the one you decided not to manage? But I thought we'd both skip it since I'm not handling the coordination anymore." "Why would I skip it? I can coordinate myself just fine. I've been doing it for 32 years. The look on her face was priceless, like it had never occurred to her that removing herself from the equation might just result in the equation solving itself without her. She stayed home that day, posting cryptic social media updates about choosing yourself and breaking free from expectations. Meanwhile, I had one of the best family gatherings in months. Without her constant, subtle complaints about having to manage these events, I actually relaxed and enjoyed my relatives' company. When I got home that evening, she was waiting with what looked like a prepared speech. "I've been thinking," she began, "and I realize I need to take my liberation more seriously. Half measures aren't enough. If I'm going to break free from the slavery of traditional marriage, I need to go all the way. What does that look like? I asked, genuinely curious. I want to try a separation. Not divorce, just space. Time to discover who I am when I'm not defined by being someone's wife. There it was, the logical endpoint of her liberation journey. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. Maintain the financial security and social status of marriage while experiencing the freedom of being single. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who'd shared my bed for 4 years, who'd promised to build a life with me, who was now asking for permission to pretend our marriage didn't exist while keeping all the benefits. That's an interesting proposal, I said finally. Tell me more about how you see this working. She launched into what was clearly a rehearsed explanation about how they discuss this concept at Wives Awakening. Trial separations where couples live together but maintain completely independent lives. No shared responsibilities, no shared activities, no expectations of partnership. It's like being roommates, she explained, but with the legal protections of marriage still in place. So you want all the freedom of being single with all the security of being married? It's not about security, she said quickly. It's about discovering my authentic self. I nodded slowly, as if seriously considering her proposal. You know what? I think you're right. You should definitely have the chance to discover who you really are. In fact, I'm going to help you get exactly the freedom you're looking for. The relief on her face was almost insulting, like she'd expected me to fight her on this, to beg her not to abandon our partnership. What she didn't realize was that freedom is a two-way street, and if she wanted to find out who she really was without the slavery of marriage, she was about to get a very thorough education. The conversation about our trial separation happened on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, I had a plan that would have made Sun Tzu proud. She came downstairs around 10. Her new liberated schedule apparently didn't include early mornings, and found me sitting at the kitchen table with a laptop, a legal pad, and what looked like serious paperwork. "What's all this?" she asked, pouring herself coffee from the pot I'd made hours earlier. "Just working out the details of your freedom project," I said without looking up. "If we're going to do the separation thing, we should probably establish some ground rules so there's no confusion." She sat down across from me, suddenly looking less confident than she had the night before. "What kind of rules?" I turned the laptop screen toward her. "Well, since you want to live like roommates with the legal protections of marriage, I figured we should formalize the arrangement. Make it official." The document on the screen was titled Cohabitation Agreement, Independent Living Arrangement. I'd spent 3 hours that morning putting it together, and it was beautiful in its simplicity. "This outlines how we'll split everything," I continued. "Rent, utilities, groceries, internet, insurance premiums, all divided 50-50. Since we're not functioning as a married couple anymore, there's no reason for me to carry the financial burden of maintaining our lifestyle." Her coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. "Financial burden? You know, the way married couples typically share resources. But since you want independence, you'll want to handle your own expenses. It's actually perfect. You'll have complete control over your money without having to answer to anyone." I slid a printed copy across the table. She scanned it with growing alarm. "According to this, I'd be paying $200 a month just for my half of the house expenses." "That's right. Plus your own car payment, insurance, phone bill, groceries, entertainment, clothing, all the normal adult expenses. Isn't it exciting? Total financial freedom." The color drained from her face as she did the math. Her part-time job at the boutique brought in maybe $1,900 a month after taxes. We'd never actually calculated what it cost to maintain the lifestyle she'd been enjoying. "But we're still married," she said weakly. "Legally, we're still a unit." "Exactly. Which is why you get all the legal protections you mentioned. But day to day, you wanted to live as independent individuals, right?" "Well, independent individuals pay their own way." She stared at the paper like it might change if she looked hard enough. "This seems extreme." "Does it? Because last week you told me that expecting you to contribute to household management was slavery, and slavery is extreme. This way you're completely free. No one expects anything from you, and you don't owe anyone anything. I pulled out another document. I also drafted a social independence clause. Since you don't want to manage our social calendar anymore, we'll maintain completely separate social lives. You can hang out with whoever you want, whenever you want, without having to coordinate with me or consider my schedule. What does that mean exactly? It means if you want to go out with friends, you go. If I want to have people over, I will. We're not each other's plus ones anymore. We're just two independent people who happen to live in the same house. The silence stretched between us. I could practically see her brain working, trying to figure out how this had gotten so complicated so fast. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out the final document. Since we're living independently, I think it makes sense to set up separate living spaces. I'll take the master bedroom and the attached bathroom. You can have the guest room and the hall bathroom. Why do you get the master bedroom? Because I'm paying for the master bedroom. The mortgage is in my name, remember? You're essentially renting space from me now, so you get renter-appropriate accommodations. Her hands were shaking slightly as she set down her coffee mug. This isn't what I meant when I said I wanted space. Really, what did you mean? I meant emotional space, time to think, freedom from expectations. And you're getting all of that. Complete emotional independence. No expectations whatsoever. You're free to think about whatever you want, pursue whatever interests you want, become whoever you want to become. Isn't that exactly what you asked for? She looked at the papers again, then back at me. For the first time in months, I saw uncertainty in her eyes instead of righteous conviction. I need time to think about this. Of course. Take all the time you need. But just so you know, I'm implementing the new arrangement starting Monday, regardless. I've already moved my stuff to the guest room temporarily, so you can have the weekend to decide where you want to set up your independent living space. That last part was a lie, but it served its purpose. The idea that I was moving forward with or without her input clearly rattled her. You can't just decide this unilaterally. Actually, I can. You wanted independence, and I'm giving it to you. The only decision you need to make is whether you want to be independent here or somewhere else. I closed the laptop and gathered up the papers. I'm heading to the gym. When you're ready to discuss the details, just let me know. But like I said, the new arrangement starts Monday, whether we've discussed it or not. As I walked toward the door, I heard her call after me. This isn't fair. I turned around and gave her the same calm smile I'd used at the dinner party. Fair? You spent weeks telling me that our marriage was slavery. You wanted liberation. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. How is that not fair? She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. Because what could she say? That she wanted freedom but not the responsibility that comes with it? That she wanted independence but not the cost? That she wanted to be liberated from marriage while keeping all the benefits of being married? I'll be back in a couple hours, I said. We can talk more then if you want. I left her sitting at that kitchen table with those papers spread out in front of her, finally getting a glimpse of what real freedom looked like. Not the fantasy version she'd been sold by her liberation group, but the actual, practical, bills need to be paid reality of living as an independent adult. The best part was that I hadn't raised my voice, hadn't gotten angry, hadn't tried to talk her out of anything. I'd simply taken her stated desires and shown her what they looked like when implemented logically and completely. If she wanted to play games with our marriage, she was about to learn that I didn't just know the rules. I wrote them. But what she didn't know yet was that her liberation was about to get a lot more complicated. Because while she was busy discovering herself at Wives Awakening, she was also discovering something else, someone else. And when I found out about it, her whole world was going to come crashing down in ways she never saw coming. Monday morning arrived like Judgment Day. I woke up at 5:30, same as always, but instead of tiptoeing around to avoid waking her, I went about my routine normally. Coffee maker grinding, shower running, news playing at regular volume. She stumbled downstairs around 8, looking like she hadn't slept well. The weekend had clearly been rough on her. So you're really doing this? she said, staring at the stack of bills I'd left on the counter with her name written on half of them. We're doing this, and I corrected. This was your idea, remember? I'm just making sure it actually works. I handed her an envelope. Your portion of this month's expenses. Since we're halfway through the month, I prorated everything. $600 for your half of the mortgage and utilities, plus I estimated about $200 for groceries you've consumed so far. She opened the envelope like it contained a bomb. $800? I can't afford $800. Then you might want to pick up some extra shifts at work or find a roommate situation that's more within your budget. The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. She could storm out and prove she was serious about independence, or she could admit that her liberation movement was just a fantasy she couldn't actually afford. This is ridiculous, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. We're married. You can't charge me rent in my own house. It's not your house, it's my house that you live in. And as of this week, you're living in it as an independent individual, which means you pay your own way like any other independent individual. I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot. I actually looked up what a furnished room goes for in our neighborhood. You're getting a deal at $600 a month. Her face went through about 5 different emotions in 10 seconds. Anger, disbelief, panic, calculation, and finally something that looked almost like respect. Where am I supposed to get $800? The same place any other adult gets money for their living expenses. Work, budget, make choices about what you can and can't afford. I finished packing my lunch, something I'd gotten quite good at, and grabbed my keys. I'm leaving for work now. When I get home tonight, I expect either payment or your alternative housing arrangements. Your choice. The drive to work felt liberating. No tiptoeing around someone's mood. No wondering what criticism was waiting for me. No trying to avoid the next lecture about my oppressive behavior. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed with a text from her. Can we talk when you get home? I responded, sure, have my money ready and we can talk about whatever you want. Passive-aggressive dots appeared and disappeared several times before she finally sent, this is insane. What's insane is spending weeks telling your husband that marriage is slavery and then being surprised when he offers you freedom from it. No response to that one. But what I didn't know was that while I was implementing Operation Independence, Rachel was making her own plans. Plans that involved someone named Derek from her Wives Awakening group. I found out 3 days later. Thursday night, Rachel left for her usual Wives Awakening meeting at 7 p.m. I'd gotten used to having the house to myself on Thursday evenings. It was actually peaceful. But around 8:30, I got a text from my buddy Mike. Dude, I think I just saw Rachel at that new wine bar downtown with some guy. Looked pretty cozy. My blood went cold. I texted back, she's supposed to be at her women's group meeting. Well, she's definitely not at a women's meeting. Want me to send you a pic? Yeah. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed with a photo that made my stomach drop. Rachel sitting in a booth at Vano's, leaning close to a guy I'd never seen before, her hand on his arm, laughing at something he said, looking happier than she'd looked with me in months. I stared at the photo for a full minute, my mind racing through the implications. How long had this been going on? Was this why she'd been so eager for independence? Had she been planning this the whole time? I texted Mike back. Thanks for letting me know. Don't let her see you. Already left. Want me to come over? No, I need to think. I sat there in my living room, the TV playing something I wasn't watching, holding a beer I wasn't drinking, trying to process what I'd just learned. My wife wasn't at a liberation meeting. She was on a date. And suddenly everything from the past few months clicked into a different pattern. The sudden interest in her appearance, the new clothes, the extra shifts she'd supposedly been picking up at work, the Thursday night meetings that always left her energized and glowing. She wasn't finding herself. She was finding someone else. I could have confronted her when she got home, could have thrown the photo in her face and demanded answers, could have blown up our marriage right then and there, but I didn't, because I was going to do something much smarter. I was going to give her exactly enough rope to hang herself. Rachel came home that night around 10:30, looking flushed and happy. She'd obviously had a few glasses of wine. "How was your meeting?" I asked casually from the couch. "Good, really good. We had a great discussion about financial independence tonight." The lie came so easily to her, so smoothly, like she'd been practicing. "Learn anything useful?" "Definitely. I'm thinking about asking for more hours at the boutique. Maybe pick up some weekend shifts." More lies, easier lies. "That's great," I said, smiling. "Financial independence is important." She looked relieved that I wasn't asking more questions. "I'm exhausted. I'm going to bed." "Good night." As soon as I heard her bedroom door close, the guest room that had become her room under our new arrangement, I pulled out my phone and did something I never thought I'd do. I hired Derek. Not the Derek she was seeing. My Derek. Derek Morrison, private investigator. The same guy who'd helped me with some business issues a few years back. I texted him, "Need to hire you for a personal matter. Can you meet tomorrow?" He responded within minutes. "Cheating spouse? Maybe. Need to know for sure. Come by my office at 9 a.m. Bring details." Friday morning, I sat in Derek's office and laid out everything. The liberation movement, the separation, the photo from Mike, the Thursday night meetings. "How long has she been going to these meetings?" Derek asked, taking notes. "About 3 months. And the sudden interest in independence started around the same time?" "Yeah." Derek nodded, like he'd seen this pattern before. Classic. She meets someone, gets validation, decides her marriage is the problem instead of her choices. "How do you want to handle this?" "I want to know everything. Who he is, how long it's been going on, where they meet, what they're planning, everything. And when I have everything, then I decide what to do with it. This is going to cost about $2,000 for a week of surveillance." I pulled out my credit card. "Do it." Over the next week, Derek earned every penny. Turns out Derek from Wives Awakening was actually Derek Brennan, 34, marketing consultant, divorced twice, and apparently specializing in recently liberated married women. He'd met Rachel at Wives Awakening 3 months ago. Not as a member, he wasn't allowed in the meetings, but he hung around outside afterward, offering to grab coffee with women who looked receptive. Rachel had been receptive. They'd been seeing each other for 2.5 months. Coffee dates turned into lunch, dates turned into dinner, dates turned into overnight stays at his apartment. The Thursday night meetings? She went to those, for about an hour. Then she left early and spent the rest of the evening with Derek. The extra shifts at work didn't exist. She was actually cutting hours to spend more time with him. Derek, the PI, sent me photos, timestamps, location data. Rachel going into Derek's apartment building and not leaving until morning. Rachel and Derek at restaurants, holding hands across the table. Rachel and Derek shopping together, looking at furniture. They were planning a life together, and then Derek found the messages. Rachel had gotten sloppy, leaving her laptop open when she went to shower one evening. Derek had installed monitoring software on our home network at my request, and he pulled everything. Messages going back 10 weeks, plans to leave me once she had enough money saved, complaints about me to Derek, lies about how controlling I was, how unhappy she'd been for years. "He's making me pay rent now," she'd written, "treating me like a tenant in my own home. It's abusive." Derek had responded, "Just a little longer, babe. Once you're out of there, you can move in with me. We'll start fresh." The kicker, the absolute soul-crushing detail, she'd been planning to file for divorce and go after half the house value, half my retirement accounts, and spousal support. Her lawyer, yes, she'd already consulted a lawyer, had told her that her best strategy was to document my financial abuse and controlling behavior for the next few months, then file with a claim of emotional distress. The independence experiment, the separation agreement, my offer to let her be free, all of it was giving her exactly the evidence she needed to paint me as the villain. Except now I had evidence of my own. I sat in Derek's office reading through page after page of messages, looking at photo after photo, watching my marriage dissolve into something ugly and calculated. "What do you want to do?" Derek asked. I looked up at him. "I want to end this. completely, permanently, and I want her to walk away with nothing. The adultery evidence will help, especially combined with her documented lies and the proof she's been planning this. But you need to be smart about how you play it. I'm listening. Don't confront her yet. Let her keep digging. The longer this goes on, the worse it looks for her. Meanwhile, you document everything on your end. Every rent payment she misses. Every lie she tells. Every time she's supposed to be working but is actually with him. How long? Give it another 2 weeks. Let her get comfortable. Then we drop the hammer. Those 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. Watching her come home from work and lie to my face. Watching her text him while sitting across the room from me. Watching her plan a future with someone else while still living in my house. Still married to me. But I played my part perfectly. The understanding husband, the supportive partner, the man who was giving her space to find herself. Meanwhile, Derek was building a file that would destroy any claim she tried to make in divorce court. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday night, I put the plan into action. Rachel left for her meeting at 7 Haursholm. I knew she'd be at Derek's apartment by 8, Karin. At 8:30, I showed up at Derek's door with Derek the PI and a process server. I knocked. Derek Brennan answered, looking confused. Can I help you? Is Rachel here? Who? My wife, Rachel. I know she's here. He went pale. Look, man, I don't know. Rachel appeared behind him, wearing his t-shirt. Her face went white when she saw me. Baby, what are you? Don't, I said. Just don't. I handed the envelope to the process server, who handed it to her. Rachel Morrison, you're being served with divorce papers. Please sign here acknowledging receipt. Her hand shook as she took the envelope. You can't. This isn't. Oh, I can, and this is. You wanted freedom. Congratulations. You're about to get all the freedom you can handle. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo, her and Derek walking into his building hand in hand. 3 months, and I said, I've known for 3 weeks, and for 3 weeks I've been documenting everything while you dug yourself deeper. Derek Brennan tried to close the door. Derek Morrison, my PI, stuck his foot in it. You might want to hear this part, he said to both of them, because it affects you too. I nodded to Derek, who pulled out his own folder. Adultery in this state affects divorce settlements, especially when one party has been plotting to defraud the other. Rachel's messages to her lawyer, we have those. Her plans to claim financial abuse, documented. Her lies about working extra hours while actually seeing Mr. Brennan here, all documented. Rachel was crying now. You had me followed. You had me played. I just caught up. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want exactly what you wanted. Freedom. My freedom from a marriage to someone who's been lying to me for months. Your freedom to be with Derek and figure out how to pay rent without my slavery supporting you. I looked at Derek Brennan. By the way, you should know that Rachel has about $47,000 in credit card debt that I've been paying off. She also has student loans, a car payment she can't afford, and a spending habit that costs about $2,000 a month. Hope you're ready for that. His face changed. What? Oh, she didn't mention that. Interesting. What else hasn't she mentioned, I wonder? I turned back to Rachel. You have 72 hours to get your things out of my house. Everything after that goes to charity. And Rachel? What? You don't get to play victim here. You don't get to tell people I was controlling or abusive or that I drove you away. Because I have 3 months of evidence showing exactly who destroyed this marriage and why. The process server finished his paperwork. You're officially served. Have a nice evening. We left them standing there. 2 people who thought they were so clever, so justified in their affair. Now they were just 2 cheaters facing reality. In the car, Derek the PI turned to me. How do you feel? Like I just took out the trash. The divorce went exactly as Derek predicted. Rachel tried to claim emotional distress and financial abuse. I produced 3 months of documented evidence of her affair, her lies, and her planned fraud. Her lawyer took one look at the file and advised her to take whatever settlement I offered. I offered nothing. The house was mine bought before marriage. The cars were mine in my name. The retirement accounts were mine. She'd contributed nothing. She wanted half of everything? She got half of the credit card debt she'd racked up. 60 days after I served her, I was legally single. Rachel moved in with Derek Brennan. I heard through mutual friends that it lasted about 4 months before he kicked her out. Turns out the excitement of an affair doesn't translate well to everyday life when bills need to be paid. Last I heard, she was back living with her parents, working at the boutique, posting on social media about toxic masculinity and how men can't handle strong women. Me? I'm thriving. I sold the house and bought a smaller place that fits my actual needs. I reconnected with old friends. I started dating a woman who understands that partnership means actually partnering, not taking while calling it liberation. I learned something valuable from all this. When someone tells you who they are, believe them the first time. When they call your marriage slavery, don't argue. Just let them be free. Because sometimes the best revenge is simply allowing people to experience the full consequences of their choices. Rachel wanted liberation. I gave it to her. She wanted independence. She got it. She wanted freedom from the slavery of marriage. She discovered that freedom without responsibility is just poverty with extra steps. And me? I discovered that the real slavery was staying with someone who valued validation from strangers more than the partnership we'd built. 6 months after the divorce was final, I got a message from her. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can we talk? I looked at the message for maybe 10 seconds before I blocked her number. Some doors don't get opened twice. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, hit that follow button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.